Today is all about Nikon, even got the socks to match. And while they make great socks, they make even better wildlife cameras. However, picking the right camera and the extensive lineup to match with their great lenses is definitely not an easy task, and we don't want to end up with the wrong piece of gear, am I right? I've used everything from the Z50 II all the way up to the flagship Z9, and while all cameras are capable, I definitely have two favorites, and no, they're not the two most expensive ones. So let's break down which camera I loved the most, which features I thought were the most important in the field, and which camera I think will suit you best, so you don't waste your hard-earned money on the wrong body. I'm Wegener, and for over 20 years I've been a professional photographer capturing unique bird photos and videos and teaching all of you to create your own masterpieces. It's important to remember that the most expensive camera isn't necessarily the best for everyone. Yes, those high-end cameras pack incredible features and top-level performance, but which camera is the right one for you will largely depend on your budget and how you plan to use it. For instance, there's no point getting the most expensive camera and then pairing it with a cheap lens. To get the best performance, a good balance is needed, and a cheaper camera may actually make you happier. But even after you find the perfect camera for you, there's one more important step, and that is to dial in the correct settings to get the best performance in the field, especially when it comes to the autofocus. And if you want some help with that, I've linked my full selection of Nikon camera setup guides for you down there in the description. In these PDF guides, I run you through all settings step by step and show you the most important changes that will help you to get the most out of the camera. On top of that, I'm also providing you with my camera setup files that allow you to install all my settings onto your camera with just one click. So if you want to get the cheat code to the perfect settings in no time, make sure to check out the guides down there in the description. Let's get into it with the Z50 II, which is a surprisingly capable camera in the field. It comes equipped with a 20 megapixel non-stacked APC crop sensor, giving us a 1.5 crop factor, meaning that a 300mm lens gives us an effective focal length of 450mm compared to using a full frame camera. So while that can be a little bit annoying on the wider end, for wildlife photography, this is actually fantastic because you can get away with using some more budget lenses and still getting that reach of more expensive telephoto lenses. The body comes with a relatively small but nice and bright EVF with a resolution of 2.36 million dots. It works well in the field, but the biggest downside is that it gives us either a blackout or kind of slideshow effect when we're shooting bursts. So if you shoot a lot of action, this is definitely one area to be aware of. The body of the Z50 II is relatively small but still lies nicely in your hands and comes with one SD card slots and uses the smaller, lower capacity ENEL25A batteries. Battery life I didn't find too bad in the field, but at the same time you would want to have at least 2 or 3 spares with you to make it through an extended shooting session. The camera also comes with a fully articulating front-facing rear LCD screen, which is great for filming yourself and something I like to see. The back of the Z50 II feels a little bit cramped and there is no dedicated AF on button. On top of that, the rear LCD screen also sticks out a fair bit, sometimes kind of getting in the way of your thumb when you want to press the buttons. The most suitable button to be used as AF on is the AEL button, but this is also surrounded by a kind of strange plastic border that forces you to use the tip of your finger rather than your flat thumb to press it. Compared to the higher end cameras, the Z50 II feels a little bit more plasticky and also doesn't have the high end weather sealing that some of the other bodies have. So I probably wouldn't want to take it out into a rainstorm with me, but overall, compared to other brands in this price bracket, the camera still feels good and quite high end. One downside on the camera is that it does not come with IBIS or in-body image stabilization, making it a little bit harder to handhold long shutter speeds or do handheld video. Whenever I took the Z50 out with me, I was quite happy. First of all, it's nice to have that crop factor because even a 600mm lens suddenly becomes like an equivalent 900mm lens, so I could be a little bit further away from my subjects and still get them large enough in the frame. And also the autofocus overall worked quite good. We have all the high-end settings like auto area tracking, bird subject detection, so setting up the camera and getting the right autofocusing modes to work was easy. And the performance overall also was quite good. The only thing I noticed that from time to time in a burst of images, the camera would have the tendency to jump on and off your subject. So in a large burst of photos, you would usually have at least a few frames that were out of focus and then the camera would jump back onto your target. When it comes to speed, we can shoot at up to 11 frames per second with the mechanical shutter in RAW and up to 30 frames per second in JPEG with the electronic shutter. We can also shoot in RAW with the electronic shutter, but I wouldn't recommend it because the camera has quite strong rolling shutter. So in most cases I resorted to using the mechanical shutter, and at 11 frames per second that was still plenty in almost all shooting situations. Even though this is a relatively affordable camera, I thought the image quality overall was excellent, and whenever I took it out, especially in good light, I was getting fantastic photos with it. Another strong suit of the Z50 II is video, giving us uncropped 4K up to 30 frames per second, and then cropped 4K up to 60 frames per second, which gave me nice results overall. So if you're looking for a capable wildlife camera on a budget, the Z50 II is definitely a contender, coming in at less than $1,000. This budget should hopefully also leave you enough room to pair it with a good lens like the 180 to 600. The next camera in our lineup is the Z5 II, which is the first full frame camera, coming in with a non-stacked 24 megapixel full frame sensor that gives us great image quality even in low light conditions. The files out of the camera looked very nice, cleaned up very well, so the image quality was definitely a standout. What I liked about the body was the high-end feel and how it sits in my hands. It also comes with 2 SD card slots and uses the same ENEL15C batteries we can also find in the Z6 III and the Z8, which is great, so you can easily interchange the batteries between these three bodies. Just like the Z50 II and the Z6 III, the Z5 II also comes with a fully articulating front-facing LCD screen, which I personally like a lot. Battery life was pretty good overall, and I didn't need too many spares, but at the same time I would always like to have at least 2 or 3 spares with me, just in case I have an extended shooting session. The EVF in the camera has the same resolution of 3.69 million dots that we can also find in the flagship Z8 and Z9 cameras. However, the biggest difference is here that we either get blackout or a slideshow effect when we're shooting fast bursts of action. And that's also one of the bigger downsides on the camera, because if you try to track fast action, there's either a blackout between frames or you're seeing the images you're taking rather than the live viewfinder, it can be sometimes hard to stay on the action. So the EVF overall is nice and bright and a joy to work with, but we have the downside of the blackout or the slideshow effect happening, which is something that we don't have in the higher end cameras. When it comes to speed, the Z5 II only shoots at up to 8.6 frames per second with the mechanical shutter and full RAW, but there is an extended mode where we have compressed RAWs, and then the camera can shoot at up to 11 frames per second. In the electronic shutter mode, the camera can also shoot up to 30 frames per second, but just like the Z50 II, I wouldn't recommend using the electronic shutter, or in this case the silent mode, because we're dealing with a lot of rolling shutter, and for instance birds in flight will have completely distorted wings, so in all situations I stuck to the mechanical or the first curtain electronic shutter. The Z5 II also comes with in-body image stabilization, or IBIS, which works in conjunction with the VR in Nikon's Nikon lenses, which is fantastic and allows me to have stable handheld video even with a 600mm prime lens, and also handhold relatively slow shutter speeds. And video is definitely a standout feature of the Z5 II. This camera is really a video monster, and that's probably its biggest selling point. We get 4K uncropped up to 30 frames per second, 4K 60 crop with a 1.5 crop, and then we also have things like RAW available and many other shooting modes with great video autofocus, which was fantastic to use in the field. When it comes to the autofocus, the Z5 II overall performs relatively well. We have all the modes available that we need, like 3D tracking or auto area AF or single point autofocus. The only downside with the camera was that while it finds a subject quite well, it sometimes had trouble sticking onto your subject for extended periods of time. In a large burst of images, you would see the camera kind of jump on and off your subject from time to time. So you still end up with a lot of sharp images, but at the same time in each burst you will also have some images that are not in focus. So if you're looking for a good camera with great video features that doesn't break the bank, coming in at around $1,700 leaving you some room for lenses as well, I think the Z5 II could be an excellent choice. Next we have the Nikon Z6 III. Before they released the firmware 2.0 for the camera, my review would have sounded quite similar to the Z5 II. But since the release of the new firmware, the camera has definitely improved and moved quite a bit more upmarket. The biggest improvement for me is the addition of bird subject detection and the overall performance of the autofocus that is just a lot more reliable now. On top of that, we also received some nice additions like the auto capture and the focus limiter. The improved subject detection, autofocus overall, and stickiness of the autofocus is definitely one key area that sets it apart from the Z50 II and the Z5 II and makes it one of my top picks in the Nikon lineup. The Z6 III comes with a partially stacked 24 megapixel backside illuminated full frame sensor. So what's a partially stacked sensor? Well, it's basically the in-between a stacked sensor and a non-stacked sensor, giving us faster readout speeds with less rolling shutter, but still some rolling shutter. But the great thing about it is that we are able to use the electronic shutter on the Z6 III and also in return get blackout-free shooting with our EVF, which is fantastic and another key difference compared to the Z50 II and the Z5 II. Speaking of the EVF, it's super nice and bright and great to work with, and it actually has the highest resolution in the current Nikon lineup with 5.69 million dots. The body of the Z6 III lies very nicely in my hand. It's not too big, not too small, not too heavy. Comes with one CF Express Type B card slot and one SD card slot, allowing us to have one super fast card in the camera, which helps us with clearing the buffer and being able to shoot at much higher frames per second continuously. Speaking of the buffer, this is actually one of the standout features of the Z6 III, because if you're using the CF Express card, you can basically not hit the buffer and you can shoot unlimited until your card is full, which is pretty crazy and amazing. When it comes to the batteries, this camera uses the same batteries you can also find in the Z5 II and the Z8, which makes it great if you want to use this as a second body, for instance. Battery life itself is also pretty good on the camera, but like I always recommend, have at least 1 or 2, maybe 3 spares with you, just in case you want to extend shooting and you're doing something like taking a lot of video or having a lot of standby that goes through the batteries quite quickly. Another key difference on the Z6 III compared to the other cameras that we previously have talked about is the speed, because this camera is much faster. We get up to 14 frames per second with the mechanical shutter and up to 20 frames per second in RAW with the electronic shutter. And because we have the partially stacked sensor in the Z6 III, we don't have to worry too much about rolling shutter, and I use the camera in electronic shutter mode exclusively. And as you can see behind me, that speed and the unlimited buffer allowed me to capture this amazing shot of a sacred kingfisher just throwing this little soldier crab in the air. Of course, this body is also nicely weather sealed and has the same front-facing screen we can also find on the Z50 II and the Z5 II, which for me as a content creator is great because I can film myself looking at the camera. With the 2.0 firmware update, I was also able to now get action shots in low light situations. And I must say, low light in general has quite surprised me with this camera, because there has been talk that the partially stacked sensor decreased dynamic range compared to the Z6 II, for instance, but even quite underexposed files at high ISOs, I was able to pull up and clean up quite well and also still maintain a little bit of detail in these dark areas. So low light performance and the overall image quality on the camera are also excellent. When it comes to video, the Z6 III also delivers. I've been able to capture some of my favorite video clips with this camera using the 600mm PF lens with the 2x extender handheld. What stands out about the body is that it's also the first body that can give us 4K 120 frames per second, even though it has a 1.5 crop with it. But on the other hand, we get 4K 30 and 4K 60 uncropped in excellent quality, and we can also shoot 6K and RAW. So when it comes to video features, this camera is fantastic. All in all, especially after the firmware update, I think the Z6 III is an excellent camera now. And if your budget can stomach the $2,500 to $2,600 or $2,700 US, I think you'll be very happy with this camera. And compared to the previous cameras we talked about, the Z50 II and the Z5 II, there are some key performance differences in this camera that will definitely increase your shooting experience in the field and will give you better results in the long run. Of course, you're paying for it with more money, but to me personally, I think the jump from the Z5 II to the Z6 III would be worth it in terms of in-the-field performance, especially if you want to shoot a lot of action or birds in flight. If I'm being really nitpicky, the only two downsides on the Z6 III for me now would be that it only shoots 4K 120 frames per second with a 1.5 crop and has that partially stacked sensor with only 24 megapixels, which doesn't leave a lot of room for cropping in certain situations. But we can all fix that by buying a Z8, which is up next. Getting the right camera and capturing RAW files in the field is only step 1 though. Step 2, which is equally as important, is to learn how to properly edit them. This is how you can truly make your images stand out, and even a dull, boring and noisy RAW file can be quickly transformed into a beautiful, vibrant file ready to be shared with the world. I know image editing can quickly feel like an overwhelming and frustrating chore because you don't know where to start or what sliders to pull, but it doesn't have to be that way. To make the editing process as easy and enjoyable as possible for you, I developed my Lightroom and Next Generation Photoshop masterclasses. In these classes, I teach you step by step my fast and efficient workflow that you can apply to all your RAW files. And you will actually enjoy the editing process because you will now know how to edit, and you also know how to use the necessary tools and techniques so you get great results every single time. But of course, you won't just be watching because I'm also providing you with my own RAW files you can edit right alongside me. And if you're not sure if my classes are worth it or the right fit for you, check out some of the amazing reviews that I receive on a daily basis from many happy students who I've helped to transform their editing lives, who now enjoy editing and get great results every single time. So if you want to get the most out of your RAW files and get better results faster and actually enjoy the editing process, I'd say check out my masterclasses that are linked for you down there in the description. I know that will help you a lot. Next up, we have my favorite Nikon body, the Z8, which feels like their flagship camera. We will talk about the Z9 later, but this body essentially has everything you could want in a flagship and also has a few features that we currently can't find in the Z9, like the focus limiter or pixel shift shooting. Whenever I grab the Z8, I'm reminded how nicely it sits in your hand. It's definitely not a small or light camera, kind of gives you something to hold onto, but it has good weather sealing and buttons and wheels in the right places, so it's easy to work with this camera. When it comes to the batteries, we find the same ENEL15C batteries we also have in the Z5 II and the Z6 III, which is nice because you can easily have this as your main body and maybe a Z6 III as your second body. One downside on the Z8 is definitely battery life because it loves to chew through the batteries, and I find it a struggle to get through a 2-hour session with just one battery. So for me, if I wanted to shoot a full day with this camera, I probably would have to have 3 or 4 spare batteries with me. There's also a battery grip available for the Z8. The only problem is that then it becomes bigger and heavier than a Z9, which kind of makes it a pointless exercise to me. And even without the grip, the camera already has a pretty good size. So if I wanted a bigger camera, I would go for a Z9. So if I'm going for a Z8, I usually go without the battery grip. Just like the Z6 III, the Z8 comes with one SD and one CIF Express Type B card slot, which is great because it helps us to quickly write away all the images that we take in the field. On the rear of the camera, we can see an LCD screen, but this is different to the 3 cameras that we've previously talked about, because this screen basically comes out, goes up, goes down and to the sides, but it does not face forward, which personally I don't like because I'm filming myself a lot in the field, but I know a lot of you guys will actually prefer, because if you're shooting close to the ground, you can actually flip it out without it kind of going off the angle of your camera. So in the end, the LCD screen will be personal preference, but ideally I would have liked to see a screen that goes in all directions and also faces forward. The EVF on the Z8 has a resolution of 3.69 million dot and is overall nice to use. Unlike all the other cameras so far, the Z8 does not come with a mechanical shutter. It only has an electronic shutter, and it can do that because it has a fast 45 megapixel BSI stacked sensor that not only gives us nice ability to crop, but also comes with super fast readout speeds and basically no rolling shutter effect. This is also one area that sets it apart dramatically from the Z6 III. We have a fully stacked sensor, we have no mechanical shutter, and we have a lot more megapixels. Just like the Z6 III and the Z9, the Z8 also shoots at 20 frames per second in full RAW. All these bodies also have the ability to shoot at much higher frames per second in JPEG, or for instance have pre-capture or pre-shooting available in JPEG, but because I only shoot in RAW when I take my wildlife images, and this is something that I would recommend for most people as well, I don't find these features too attractive and don't use them myself until they will be available in full RAW. Whenever I'm out and about with the Z8, and in particular when I'm using it with my favorite lens, the 600mm PF, I'm just reminded how nice of a combo this is. It's not too heavy, you can basically handhold this all day and you're getting good autofocusing, great video performance, great stabilization, and also fantastic image quality. So all around a very enjoyable combo to use. The autofocus on the Z8 is definitely a step up from the previously discussed cameras. It is nice and fast, has good subject recognition, and also sticks to our subjects very well. The 45 megapixel files out of the Z8 are beautiful. They have great detail, great sharpness, and also even in low light give us not too high noise levels and files that clean up very well when we run them through noise reduction software. So whether it's good shooting conditions or extreme low light, the Z8 definitely delivers. I've used it in many different scenarios over the years and it has basically never let me down. Another standout of the camera is the IBIS, because in combination with the image stabilization in Nikon's lenses, it is just fantastic. It's super stable and it's quite easy to do handheld video even with long lenses, which is something that I really value in the field because it allows me to just walk around, suddenly see a cool scene, and without having to grab a tripod or anything else, I can get a pretty good video clip of that. In terms of video specs, the Z8 also fully delivers. We have fantastic video autofocus. We can shoot 4K uncropped up to 120 frames a second, and we even have 8K available, and of course it can shoot in RAW as well. And we also have the ability, like the Z6 III and the Z9, to shoot in ProRes in camera, which is also fantastic. It gives you large files, but at the same time really easy to edit files. Out of the Nikon lineup, this would also be the top choice for me. I think it's the best compromise of capabilities, video features, photo features, speed, and size, as well as weight. It's not too big, not too small, and basically gives you everything you want in the field. And that brings us to the Z9, Nikon's true flagship mirrorless camera. It's big, it's heavy, it doesn't mind a bit of rain, and basically will deliver in all shooting situations. And the best thing is that with its bigger battery, you basically never have to worry about charging, and 1 or 2 batteries will basically get you through 1 or 2 days of shooting. So if you're after a real beast that can tough it out and shoot anywhere, the Z9 is definitely the right camera for you. But you're definitely paying a price for this size and robustness. And I'm not talking about the money. I'm talking about the weight of the camera, which is probably the biggest downside for me, because it comes in at around 1.34 kilos or around 3 pounds, which is definitely on a very heavy side and heavier than the 600mm PF lens, for instance. So for some, this might not be an issue, but I think overall it would be nicer if this camera would weigh in at a max of like 1 kilo or like 2.1 or 2.2 pounds. I definitely like how the Z9 sits in your hand and the built-in battery grip that makes it easy to do vertical shooting. And I love that it has 2 CF Express Type B card slots. So you have 2 fast cards in your camera, allowing you, for instance, to do instantaneous backups or shoot to 2 cards at the same time without a slower card being a bottleneck. On the Z9, we can find the same 3.69mm EVF that we can also find on the Z8, and the camera also comes with the same rear LCD screen design. Just like the Z8, the Z9 comes with the same 45 megapixel stacked BSI sensor that gives us great image quality, fast readout speeds, and basically no rolling shutter. And of course, we also have blackout-free shooting in the camera. When it comes to speed and autofocusing, the Z9 is also great. In some shooting situations, I actually feel like the Z9 performs even a little bit better than the Z8 when it comes to the autofocus. When it comes to the speed, both cameras are identical. We can shoot up to 20 frames per second in full RAW, and then we have 30, 60 or 120 frames per second available in JPEG only. Just like the Z8, I've also used the Z9 in extreme low light conditions, and overall the performance and image quality has still been very good. Of course, there's a bit of noise in the files, but they generally clean up very well. When it comes to video, essentially all the things I said about the Z8 are also true for the Z9. We get 4K uncropped up to 120 frames per second, we get 8K up to 60 frames per second, we got RAW shooting, we got ProRes shooting, we got lots of other codecs, and great video autofocus as well. So all in all, when it comes to video, both of these cameras deliver fantastically in the field. And of course, the Z9 also comes with in-body image stabilization, which allows you to do handheld video even with huge lenses like the 600mm TC. The biggest difference between the Z9 and the Z8, which essentially is a mini Z9, is definitely the body size and shape, the weight of the body, the much better battery life on the Z9, and the 2 CF Express Type B card slots on the Z9, which allow for easier recording without having a bottleneck of the SD card. On the other hand, the Z8 currently has a few features we can't find in the Z9, like pixel shift shooting and also the focus limiter, but they may come via a firmware update at some stage in the future to the Z9. What I like about the Z9, the Z6 III and the Z8 is also that all three of them have the fantastic auto capture feature, allowing you to set up the camera essentially as a camera trap, and then it starts recording or taking images whenever a subject enters your scene and matches your parameters you dialed into the camera. So while I think overall the Z9 is Nikon's best camera, it's definitely not for everyone. Not only because of the price of $5,500 US, but also because of the quite large body and a relatively heavy weight. So if you want the best of the best and often find yourself in tough shooting conditions like heavy rain or snow, then the Z9 is probably the right body for you. But I think most hobbyists would actually be happier with the Z8 or maybe even a Z6 III. Which camera will suit you the most will come down to budget and use case. Personally, I shoot a lot of small subject, a lot of small birds, so I'm naturally drawn to high megapixel cameras like the Z8 or the Z9 that gives me an extra peace of mind when it comes to cropping my images. But at the same time, these cameras cost a lot more and you can still get fantastic images and crop a little bit if you're shooting with a 24 megapixel Z5 II or Z6 III or the 1.5 crop 20 megapixels of the Z50 II. In good lighting situations, all these cameras will give you fantastic photos and videos. The big differences between the bodies will only come out when you find yourself in tough low light shooting conditions or shoot a lot of fast action. Then the cameras from the Z6 III onwards will give you a clear edge in the field, and in particular the Z8 and the Z9 will give you the best performance. So which one is the right camera for you? I hope this video helped you to gain some insight into the wildlife lineup of Nikon cameras and made it easier to pick the right body. And if you've picked one already or plan to pick one, let me know in the comments which body is it going to be and what lens do you think you're going to pair it with. Also give me a thumbs up for the video, check out my channel membership and masterclasses, and of course hit that subscribe button so we can grow our community, and I'll see you guys in another video very soon. Bye!